Bonjour, bienvenue. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier les organisateurs, organisatrices de ce colloque de m'avoir invité à présider cette session. Alors, je suis très honoré parce que c'est un lieu impressionnant qui recèle beaucoup de trésors. Aussi, j'ai un sentiment d'illégitimité parce que moi, je travaille sur la période contemporaine, mais pas sur la période qui nous occupe, à savoir le 19e siècle. Néanmoins, on ne peut qu'avoir un vif intérêt sur ces images et imaginaires de la prostitution au 19e siècle parce qu'ils sont extrêmement puissants et ils continuent aujourd'hui encore à nourrir nos représentations de ce sujet. Ils continuent à nourrir tous les débats très contemporains sur la prostitution. Alors juste pour l'anecdote, je suis régulièrement sollicité par des journalistes qui me posent la question: est-ce qu'il faut rouvrir les maisons closes comme solution au débat très actuel sur cette question. Donc cet imaginaire de la maison close qu'on a exploré hier, il continue à nourrir les représentations et je dirais aussi les fantasmes. Alors à cette question, je pense que la réponse est non. Pour des raisons que je pense la session de ce matin va permettre d'expliciter, d'aborder. Alors avant de passer la parole aux vrais spécialistes de ces images et imaginaires de la prostitution, quelques petites réflexions éparses, très brèves. Première chose, pour faire la liaison avec ce qu'on a précisément exploré hier après-midi sur la question de la maison close, les termes extrêmement importants qui sont revenus, Michel Perrault y a insisté, c'est les termes de clôture, le terme de seuil également ont été extrêmement présents. Or, ce matin, on va plutôt explorer la prostitution hors les murs, celle qui, précisément, échappe à l'entreprise d'assignation spatiale du réglementarisme, celle qui échappe aux tentatives d'enfermement ou de délimitation, qui échappe également à l'entreprise de contrôle du réglementarisme qui a trouvé dans la maison close son lieu spécifique d'expression. Deuxième petite chose, c'est cette session de ce matin, elle a pour titre « Mondes interlopes ». Alors on peut aussi s'intéresser à cette notion d'interlope. Alors pour l'anecdote, l'interlope, c'était le nom du journal que publiait le groupe de libération homosexuelle de Lyon dans les années 1970. Alors, ce qui amène peut-être à deux éléments. Ça a déjà été remarqué hier, mais ces images et imaginaires de la prostitution au XIXe siècle définissent la prostituée comme essentiellement une figure féminine. La figure masculine, c'est essentiellement celle du client. L'homme prostitué, il est éclipsé, en tout cas il a une place très secondaire, donc on peut s'interroger aussi sur cette dimension résiduelle de la prostitution masculine, comme si elle relevait d'une autre logique qui l'associerait à l'homosexualité. Je renvoie aux travaux de Régis Revenin sur cette question. Et puis ça pose la question des rapports entre la prostitution et d'autres formes de déviance sexuelle non nécessairement vénale. Donc on va peut-être être amené à explorer des configurations à la fois indécises et déséquilibrées entre des affects, de la libido et des intérêts dans toute cette zone, dans tous ces mondes interlopes. Et puis, troisième point, c'est la question du stigmate. Alors qu'on a toute une tradition sociologique qui a montré que la déviance, elle ne se caractérisait peut-être pas tant par des pratiques jugées non conformes à un système de valeurs, des normes des pratiques transgressives, mais que le stigmate, la déviance, c'était peut-être davantage le fait d'être désigné comme tel, comme ayant ces pratiques transgressives, et que cette désignation, cet étiquetage, il est d'autant plus puissant et d'autant plus difficile à contester qu'il est opéré par des instances, des agents qui disposent d'une autorité sociale, d'une autorité institutionnelle, et évidemment la police, la médecine, le droit jouent un rôle extrêmement puissant dans ces processus d'étiquetage. On sait aussi que pour le XIXe siècle, c'est le projet même du réglementarisme avec sa mise en registre, son fichage des prostituées qui est de faire des définitions, des étiquetages irréfutables des prostituées. Mais ce qu'on va peut-être aussi explorer ce matin, c'est la capacité de certaines à échapper, ou à essayer en tout cas d'échapper à ces étiquetages comme prostituées, comme déviantes, une capacité aussi à résister, éventuellement, dans le cas des grandes courtisanes, à renverser le stigmate, c'est-à-dire à en faire quelque chose de valorisant, ou en tout cas de moins disqualifiant socialement. Mais évidemment, tout le monde ne dispose pas des mêmes ressources pour mettre à distance le stigmate. Alors, précisément, cette question de l'indécision, du flou sur le statut prostitutionnel, eh ben on va l'explorer dans la première communication de Jann Matlock, avec cette figure de la lorette, de personnage féminin un petit peu aux marges de la prostitution, ou en tout cas qui résiste, qui essaye de s'échapper. Donc, peut-être Jann, si vous pouvez venir et prendre place. Donc, Jann Matlock est senior lecturer au département de français de University College à Londres. Elle a une œuvre foisonnante et notamment un travail passionnant sur l'influence délétère de la lecture sur la propension des femmes au crime. Mais pour ce qui nous intéresse plus spécifiquement pour ce colloque, donc elle est l'auteur de Scenes of Seduction, Prostitution, Hysteria and Religious Difference in 19th Century France, à Columbia University Press. Elle achève un livre intitulé Before the Voyeur, un legs que la langue française a laissé à l'anglais, sans doute le terme de voyeur. Il faudrait peut-être s'interroger sur ces échanges linguistiques. Et voilà, je lui laisse la parole sur une communication sur notre lorette quotidienne.
Mais merci beaucoup, merci aux organisateurs du colloque. Je suis désolée, je vais parler anglais parce que comprimer ce que j'ai à dire en français, c'était impossible. Donc, je suis vraiment désolée. Who is for sale here, and at what price? Giraud's 1867 salon painting of the Opera Ball interpolates viewers in the same way as its own figures are thematized doing, calling out to carnival merrymakers and activating an exchange of ayad. This noisy painting seems to shout you down if you weren't already chortling at eminent delights or giggling at top-hatted men entangled by wily masqueraders. If you're an aficionado of the balls, you know the codes evoked in this painting. You know who's for sale and who's about to be taken for a ride. Like Manet's 1873 painting that similarly depicts the avant-foyer of the Le Pelletier Opéra, Giraud's canvas evokes the prostitutional marketplace of this haut lieu of French culture, while inviting its spectator to join the people watching and laughter, and si affinité to enter into the seductions. Who's for sale here? The painting commands you to guess. What would you pay for the pleasures here on display? Giraud's Bal de l'Opéra, like the Goncourt scandal-ridden play Henriette Maréchal, for which it later served as set design, are directly indebted to the prolific printmaker known as Paul Gavarni, lauded by Baudelaire for his paintings of everyday life in the July Monarchy. Gavarni's prints popularized the opera ball, costumed its participants, and relayed the possibilities for carnivalesque pleasures to the readers of satirical and art journals, to the physiologie-crazed masses, as well as to the passers-by staring in the windows at Maison Aubert. If you lived in Paris in the July Monarchy, even if you were not literate, you were promised that Gavarni's lithographs would teach you the codes for observing and enjoying, as well as avoiding, the dangers of the spectacular intrigues of modern Paris. By the time of Giraud's Second Empire painting, nostalgic accounts proliferated of a golden age of the opera ball where pleasures were simpler and intrigues more subtle. Commentators even pretended the real carnival existed by then only in Gavarni's prints. Some claimed that in hundreds of lithographs in the Charivari between 1837 and 1848, Gavarni had literally invented carnival. Crucial to that invention was his participation in the myth of La Lorette. This paper explores how the mid-19th century press exploited clandestine prostitution for political and aesthetic purposes, using as its example Gavernese prints in Le Charivari, whose masthead promised a daily lithograph. I ask how the lorette operated as a strategy of representation, as opposed to an occupation or a vocation, making the rounds of several spaces where that representation had significant social ramifications, apartments in the Nouvelle Athènes, Parisian boulevards, and carnival balls. I consider how Gavernese prints elaborate an account of the sexual politics of the July monarchy, as well as invitations to subversive possibilities for both looking and thinking critically. Having worked some years ago on Gavernese prints as a set of interlocking narratives, my new research here sought to analyze these prints in the context of their participation in the newspaper and publishing marketplace of their era. Like the flaneur, the lorette emerged in 1841 from the popular physiological guides disseminated as cheap illustrated books, first by Maison Aubert. This popular print purveyor had been publishing similar texts in his newspaper, Le Charivari, sporting woodcuts by its stable of regular caricaturists since 1840, during a period of harsh censorship that saw the paper's director sentenced to 2 years in prison and its publisher heavily fined. As one subject among 100, the lorette belonged to a crowd of types. The series, the series pretended to help readers interpret, but her presence was woven through a large number of those texts, especially some 29 of which were connected to dancing. The lorette thus became a central project of the panoramic literature of the late July monarchy. She soon became a mainstay in Le Charivari, with Gavarni's 79 eponymous planches, as well as in hundreds more prints depicting carnival festivities where lorette and their débardeur alter egos often took center stage. The mythical lorette, I say lorette when I'm talking about the myth, was depicted as a young woman, first circulating visibly in the new quartier around Notre-Dame de la Lorette, who exchanged second, sex for rent, fine fashion and luxuries, and third, who frequented theaters, restaurants, and especially carnival balls. This master of disguises and expert consumer of city spectacles can only be distinguished from femme honnête by an astute observer. Either a connoisseur who knows her œillade come at a price, or an investigator of mœurs who evokes her worldview to understand the changing social, economic, and political values of the July monarchy. The profusion of texts about Lorette in the 1840s are a response both to her seduction and to the confusion it evoked. The lorette was not just a type to recognize, classify, and mock as, say, the Provincial de Paris or le Rentier or le Marié are in the physiological guides. She was a strategy of representation unto herself, by which I mean, first, that she is depicted, second, that she's made to speak for, and third, that she represents in such a way that we are reminded of how texts operate as pictures. In addition to being sartorial shapeshifters and wizards of modernity's forms, Lorette were promoted as master observers who had a lock on social codes and could out-observe men and many other women. Unique among the physiologized, she is interpolated as reader as well as subject. The text literally uses the imperative to say to her, braquez sur votre poète, vos lorgnettes. And Gavarni's image does exactly that. And they're given unprecedented capacities for observation, including a rare ability to use optical instruments in productive ways. The flaneur, by comparison, just makes a spectacle of himself with his lorgnon and is robbed when he engages visually with caricatures. The lorette is unique for her panoramic omnipresence, but even more for her mastery of the visual ploys that fuel such taxonomic texts. Like the flaneur, that fantasy of omnipresent looking that seems to double for the physiological project itself, the lorette names a position for speculating on the world. But more than that, she seems to accumulate accounts that force those around her to look anew at its representational frameworks. The lorette may be pleasant to observe, but the texts and images circulating around her are continuously undone by questions about what is being consumed in and through her. How did men use her? How did she use men? What are these books, prints, and newspapers using her for? What do their readers in turn want from her? The lorette is a strategy for representation, but she is not a subject of ambiguity, except to those who are duped by her intrigues and sartorial masquerades. Named even if euphemistically, the lorette is a prostitute like any other, an insoumise within the legal structures forged by the police, escaping registration and health checks by the sheer fortune of her semi-stable address and the protection of bourgeois men. While the femme sans nom is depicted in panoramic text as already teetering over the gutter, La Lorette names a temporal position rather than the acts that constitute her état or the payment that it entails. There's an edge to that accounting. While for a brief moment this woman has pretensions to self-worth, the caricatures emphasize that won't last. Les hommes se suivent et ne se ressemblent pas. As Gavarni's Second Empire work makes palpable, no one can sustain for long the youth, beauty, and elegance required of a lorette. Debts to fournisseurs, landlords, and protectors yield precarity where her only possible plot is collapse. But the lorette is not just depicted. The press enters into partnership with her. It invites readers to capitalize on her looks, profiting in its turn from her représentation, a bénéfice, but it does so by staging her perspective on her society. Her endurance lay in the fact that lorette were not only caricatural fantasies, but also very real demographic social entities. Young clandestine prostitutes who eluded, if only temporarily, family obligations, marital bonds, and the police. Crucial to Lorette's ascent was her canny intelligence about performances, theatrical spectacles and balls, bien sûr, but also fashion, masquerade costumes, and social semblances. Caricatures promote the lorette's capacities to penetrate the artifices of July monarchy society and to show it as corrupt. Gavarni's caricatures thus have a political function that transcends their semblances. Few of the men in this series, depicting leering at girls half their age, discovering they are being two-timed by their mistresses, and speculating upon ways to seduce men, or to seduce women. Few of these men get the last laugh. The caricature journal Le Charivari, with lithographic slices of life and captions that put words in the mouth of its figures, made capturing La Lorette one of its biggest business ventures. Crucial to this work were the theater balls of the July monarchy. Especially after 1836, theater and opera balls provided 2 months of tumultuous revelry each winter, figuring masquerades widely imagined as troubling bourgeois households and abetting clandestine prostitution. Ensuring a tentative space of liberty for men and women of all classes to mix freely, the balls reputedly endorsed a wild search for pleasure that seemed particularly to embolden female carnival goers. Moralists complained endlessly about the danger of such balls. In 1840, prison reformer Josephine Mallet evoked mass balls as a primary reason for women's fall into criminality. Others railed at the freedoms women took there, at their forwardness, flaunting of propriety, even purported participation in orgies. Still others complained of the mixing of social classes and the difficulty of knowing with what kind of woman one was dealing. Lorettes were fantasized as omnipresent at the opera and other mass carnival balls. From the successful Musée opera balls of 1837, elite culture journals complained of lascivious dancing and debauchery in the high cathedral of French culture, due to a perceived influx of working-class female ballgoers who needed only a mask and a costume to join the revelry, whereas men paid a hefty 10 francs, 3 times a male day worker's earnings. The débardeur costume shown here, Gavarni's invention and a mainstay of his prints, was associated with these working-class women, and in turn with the lorette they were imagined to be. Women who rigged up a cheap docker's uniform to show off their curves, and hiding behind the mask that promoted intrigues, exploited the fervor of the ball to separate men from their senses, their wallets, and even their fortunes. But one could not count on the demure garb imposed on bourgeois women. Prostitutes were reputed to hide as often behind the domino costume as in the loose-fitting pants that freed bodily can-cans. Even when the morals brigade stood alert, there was an anticipation of drunken quadrilles. They could not protect the bourgeoisie from the very desires that mass balls promised to fulfill. The crowd at opera balls was staggering, 6,000 to 8,000 people at each event, and dozens of theater balls each season translated into the all-night partying of probably about a third of the adult population of Paris. Balls were profitable for theaters, restaurants, costumers, and wine merchants. No one writing about the balls seemed to doubt that they were also profitable for women whose salaries as workers might not have let them survive the winter without a coup de pouce from investors. Quote, "The ball is le bal et la bourse des femmes galantes," wrote one guide. Historian François Ganneau has suggested that the actual presence of working-class women was exaggerated by observers in order to écarter l'hypothèse plus embarrassante que les femmes honorables aient eu aussi l'envie de goûter le spectacle. Under the mask required of all female ball-goers, women of any class might have hidden their identities. What is certain is that regardless of the actual class of the women at the ball, all were imagined operating as if they were available, perhaps for a flirt for the ball's duration, or maybe for a fling beyond the party. And since availability seemed to carry with it a certain charge of venality, one suspects that the bourgeoise femmes who came to the ball to intrigue did so in part by pretending to belong to that class of women with whom one partied at a price. For this reason, it's hardly surprising that the women in Gavarni's caricatures routinely behave with a forwardness that popular opinion associated with clandestine prostitutes, liberating themselves to flights of dance and flirting that no conduct book of the era would have permitted a proper bourgeoise. The masquerades of the balls made everything possible, and it is particularly this frenzy of transgression that Gavarni exploits in his caricatures, imagining a space where seeing is not always believing, and where a special premium is placed on vision that penetrates surface appearances. Masked, the women of the balls have the advantage of being able to see their courtiers who see them only when they choose to unveil themselves. Anecdotic accounts of the kinds of intrigues this engendered were the stuff of novels, and indeed observers often associated the adventures of ball-going women with the Romanesque. Newspapers loved to tell stories of the intrigues of bourgeois women who went to the balls to keep an eye on their spouses, flirted with them, and ultimately accompanied them home only to reveal their true identity. Gavarni's prints are unique in evoking regularly the transactions between women who may well really be for sale and the men whose purchase power puts a premium on youth and the seduction, and the illusion of seduction. Gavarni's opera ball caricatures show many kinds of revelry, but they especially focus on the women's commerce there, on the fluidity of roles that women adopted, thanks to their masks as well as their cross-dressing. They suggest how women might profitably reap benefits from the spectacle of carnival. My argument here is that Gavarni's construction of the lorette and débardeur evince a powerful indictment of how power was channeled in the 1840s. A scandal in November 1843 suggests the extent to which Gavarni's caricatures in Le Charivari functioned to question the political, moral, as well as aesthetic values of an era. A month after Eugène Sue's Mystère de Paris finished its run in the Journal des Débats, in a year of renewed press censorship, Gérardin's La Presse staged a frontal attack on two opposition papers, Le National and Le Charivari. Though blatantly political, the brouhaha with the Republican National culminated in a lawsuit for injure et la délation, a tempest in a teacup relating to a feuilleton novel long forgotten. La Presse dragged the caricature journal into the battle, encouraged no doubt by the smaller papers' decade-long attacks on government limits to free speech. But La Presse did not target editor Philippon or any of the newspaper's anonymous writers. It attacked the morality of the caricatures, calling le Charivari un parti qui ne trouve rien de mieux à offrir au peuple pendant 365 jours de l'année que toutes les obscénités et tous les scandales de Paris. Targeted here were Gavarni's lithographs, named via his subjects, débardeur, lorette, ivrogne, mari conspué, and by reference to 9 captions of recent drawings from the series Carnaval à Paris, Les Lorettes, Impressions de ménage et L'éloquence de la chair. While the quoted captions evoked the immediate contemporary Le Charivari, La Presse cast a much broader net, calling the opposition paper's collaborators hypocrites and evoking Le Charivari as enjoying l'indulgence de la censure, qui met son visa à tant d'obscénité. Le Charivari responded with a fervent defense of Gavarni, naming several projects for which he was famous, works that helped maintain a healthy circulation for Le Charivari despite frequent government seizures and trials. The Republican paper rejected La Presse's claim that these images show simply mauvaises mœurs. Instead, argued Le Charivari, the caricatures depict such scenes to turn such mœurs en ridicule. According to Le Charivari, they snipe. Quand la presse nous aura prouvé que les lorettes de Gavarni ont fait des lorettes, nous passerons condamnation. Gavarni's drawings, they said, were une gaie satire, trop véridique pour être prude, et assez claire dans son ensemble pour qu'on ne puisse pas, sans mauvaise foi, en dénaturer le sens et la portée. A chill was in the air. Gavarni published a few more caricatures and ceded his place to Daumier's Bas Bleu, and disappeared for nearly 3 years from Le Charivari's pages. And while the artist of Lorette and Débardeur contributed from 1847, his long absence significantly marked both the Republican press and the possibilities for caricatural social commentary. What was on the line in these images? What did the 9 caricatures and their legend, as well as the series they represented, evoke? I want to argue that none of these characters actually does anything out of the ordinary in relation to what Gavarni has been publishing in Le Charivari for the past 5 years. Rather, these caricatures have become more politically volatile because of a growing awareness of social inequality, particularly as it affects working-class women's lives. Although the Débardeur and Lorette series from 1840-43 have stepped up criticism of the bourgeoisie, in autumn 1843, the Republican periodicals' calls for change were crowned by lithographs evoking adultery, clandestine prostitution, inept policing, and bourgeois hypocrisy. The Daily Lorette that Le Charivari set loose on top-headed old men with potbellies was rivaled only by the transgressive gazes of female débardeurs. Gavarni's caricatures ask what it means for a woman to look in a volatile public space that allows her to put on a show without sanctions. It engages her for displays that encourage her posing intrigues and makes her masquerade a cover for sexual exchanges of her own choosing. The critical position represented in caricature after caricature makes the bourgeois men the butt of jokes, eliciting a complicity with a moral view sympathetic to the young women driven into prostitution by economic necessity, rampant consumerism, poor educational opportunities for girls, and limited rights for women. By calling out these inequalities is tricky business. This is, after all, an era when it is more acceptable to censor a social novel or a caricature or a newspaper for outrage à la morale publique et aux bonnes mœurs than to imagine what mœurs would have to entail that did not depend on a continual replenishment of young female flesh. Unlike the Goncourt, whose 1853 physiology of the Lorette objectified the clandestine prostitute as a corrosive businesswoman with no redeeming virtues, or the Giraud painting that suggests prostitution at the opera ball may not end happily, Gavarni created lorettes who can be a subject of empathy. His lorette problematized their own visibility, even as they offer the reassuring lure of seeing to be there to be consumed. But that's part of what makes these caricatures of ball-goers and pleasure seekers so powerful. If you enjoy them, you're on the line. Dans ces balles où d'autres ne trouvent que le plaisir, nous avons senti la douleur, wrote the Fourierist Victor Enneken in the early 1850s of the world Gavarni all but invented with his lithographic jokes. Tandis qu'on rit des triomphes éphémères, des jeunes polkeuses, de leurs danses risquées, de leurs amour changeant, des applaudissements, ironie académique qui les salue, nous prenions les femmes dont la vie est précaire et semée d'amertume secrète. Gavarni's caricatures of the 1850s were increasingly preoccupied with such anxieties. His last Lorette series wrote quite another ending of the narrative he had begun in the July monarchy. His Lorette vieillies have sunken into a degradation few might have predicted from their pretty poses and seductive ambitions. Il lui sera beaucoup pardonné parce qu'elle aura beaucoup dansé, announces a caricature showing a débardeur from a parallel series. But the aging Lorettes of the 1850s seem to have learned otherwise. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour cette communication très dense, à la fois en contenu historien et également en iconographie. Alors il y a une image qui m'a particulièrement attiré l'attention, c'est celle où il y a une lorette qui dit « mais moi je ne suis pas numéroté comme un fiacre ». Alors justement c'est une illustration de ce que je disais tout à l'heure, c'est-à-dire cette capacité à résister aux stigmates que représente le fait d'être fiché, d'être enregistré par la police, par le dispositif réglementariste. Et puis, il y a plein d'autres pistes, notamment sur la dimension de classe, qu'on voit bien avec des clients qui sont essentiellement bourgeois et des jeunes femmes dont les textes nous renseignent qu'elles ont un parler populaire qui n'est pas celui des élites culturelles et qui, dans le même temps, mettent à distance par le costume le débardeur, etc., mettent à distance une origine défavorisée qu'elles essayent peut-être de mettre à distance par leur activité. Bon, c'est peut-être des choses qu'on retrouvera dans la discussion.